air service. So while the FAA appears to be making progress, there are still key aspects of implementation they have to address. And the Government Accountability Office previously reported in 2012 and 2015 that implementation of NextGen has seen cost increases and delays. In February, in fact, I worked with Subcommittee Ranking Member Garrett Graves, the Committee Chair Pete DeFazio, and Committee Ranking Member Sam Graves to ask the FAA about the status of NextGen implementation. And the purpose of this roundtable for subcommittee members is to hear from stakeholders about where modernization and implementation currently stand. It's important for members of the subcommittee and Congress to understand the status of FAA's efforts and the input from stakeholders. It's also important because knowing where FAA is now will inform where FAA can and should go in the future in terms of NextGen. So what I'd like for us to discuss today in part is where the FAA is in relation to the recommendations from the Department of Transportation Inspector General report issued in March. The OIG report found shortcomings in management of NextGen programs and that the FAA's current estimate of end state NextGen benefits to be about $100 billion, which is $113 billion less than the 2007 estimate. So while that estimate shows less benefit, it is important to note that the estimated $100 billion in benefits still far exceed the total projected cost of NextGen through 2030, which is $36 billion. When it comes to benefits, so the IG report also found that FAA has not transparently stated NextGen benefits to date. And as a result, stakeholders do not have a clear view of how investments in modernization will translate to quantifiable benefits to operations. And lastly, the FAA continues to encounter delays in implementing things like the performance-based navigation procedures, or PBNs, as we call them. The final report issued 3 recommendations the FAA has concurred with and has already begun implementing. That the FAA should publish metrics that measure performance. The FAA should develop and implement a process whereby interim adjusted benefit projections and interim implementation analyses are incorporated to support prioritizing NextGen programs. And third, the FAA should regularly update stakeholders and provide a risk-adjusted NextGen benefit projection. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the FAA and other groups present today to answer 2 basic questions. What about these modernization attempts is making the US airspace safer? And second, what do FAA, Congress, and the stakeholders need to get the full benefits of NextGen? Finally, I want to ensure there's a continued collaboration between FAA, stakeholders, and the workforce to implement these modernization efforts. I look forward to hearing from today's participants. And with that, I want to turn it over to Ranking Member Garrett Graves for any opening remarks. Garrett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you having this roundtable today, and I want to thank Chairman DeFazio as well. Mr. Chairman, NextGen, most folks often say that it dates back to 2007, but the reality is it goes all the way back to 2003. We've spent somewhere around $9 billion over that 18-year period. And as you noted in your opening statement, where we are today is certainly not anywhere close to where it was anticipated when this program began. While I don't often quote our distinguished full committee chairman, I think he's referred to this as NeverGen a few times. And unfortunately, I think that he's right. We've got to get this program back on track. The return on our investment has been incredibly unclear, as numerous reports have indicated. I'm going to go through a few of those in just a minute. The FAA has set expectations, they've made promises, and unfortunately, those promises have not been delivered upon. Now, it'd be easy to sit here and exclusively blame the FAA, but the reality is that Congress has some culpability as well in regard to irregular funding streams, in regard to government shutdowns and other challenges. Bottom line is, and I think that Chairman Larson and I share this, is that we've got to get NextGen back on track. We've got to have a clear understanding of the objectives, and we've got to ensure that we're implementing the best technology, because it certainly has evolved an awful lot over the last 18 years in both the IT space as well as in the aviation space. Both the GAO and the Department of Transportation's Inspector General have done numerous reports back in 2012, well before I came to Congress. The GAO says that the three air traffic control programs with the largest cost increases, totaling more than $4 billion, are key to ATC modernization. The Inspector General in 2014 said underlying programmatic challenges, such as the lack of an executable plan for coordinating among multiple programs, unresolved complex technical and operational issues, and ineffective collaboration with industry, effectively plagued the program. In 2016, the Inspector General said 8 of FAA's 15 ongoing major system acquisitions experienced a cumulative cost increase of $3.8 billion beyond the original estimates, with delays ranging from 7 to 174 months, an average delay of 51 months. Mr. Chairman, as you well know, no one would stand for this in the private sector, and we're the steward of taxpayers' dollars, and we shouldn't stand for it as well. As the chairman noted in his opening statement, in March of this year, just a few months ago, the Office of Inspector General said that the FAA's most recent business case model projects total next-gen benefits to effectively have a reduction of $100 billion over the original estimate. And yes, Mr. Chairman was correct in stating that it still does demonstrate a positive cost to benefit ratio. But how in the world can we have a project or a program that has a $100 billion reduction in benefits over the 18-year period? We've got, I'll say it again, we've got to get this back on track. Modernizing our air transportation system is vitally important, but it's also critical that we get it right, and we learn from past missteps and mistakes so we don't repeat them moving forward. This was one of the reasons for the 2 congressionally mandated reports that were in the FAA reauthorization bill in 2018. And we're certainly waiting for that second report. The first one was submitted in the annual report on the return on investment, but I'd like the FAA to update the subcommittee on the status of the second report that was actually due in April of 2019. The report is vitally important and will inform decisions by the FAA and the Congress in the coming years. To all participants, I appreciate your joining the discussion today and look forward to hearing how you believe the FAA can best deliver this much needed and long promised benefits of the Next Gen program. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Thanks, Representative Graves. I want to provide an opportunity for the chair of the full committee, Representative DeFazio. Pete?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. One of my first hearings when I came to Congress with Norm Mineta as chair of the Aviation Subcommittee was about modernization of the air traffic control system. I don't think we called it Next Gen back then. We went out on a little trip later that year to see the air traffic controllers workstation of the future being produced by Lockheed Martin. Of course, that never happened. And here we are, 35 years later. I've been here a long time, and the end is not yet in sight. We need to hone in on this. I have some very specific cost beneficial objectives and get them done. That's it. I'm looking forward to hearing from the panel. Thanks.
Thanks.
Could you clarify, is the end of your tenure not anywhere in sight, or the end of Next Gen? Just curious.
It's a different roundtable.
You'd like to hear on your side of the aisle when that is. They got a target on me, but I won't say, Garrett.
It's a different roundtable. Garrett, is Sam on? You know?
I don't believe he is.
Okay, that's good. Thanks. Then we'll move on to the panel. Just a reminder for members, if you could use the raise hand function, it would help me call on you. And this is a roundtable, so we're just going to go alternating Democratic member, Republican member, and it'll just be in the order of as I see your hands, so not like a hearing. But we do have a great panel, and I'm going to introduce them in order of how they'll present. We'll first hear from the Honorable Eric Soskin, who's the Inspector General from the DOT, and I see he's here. Then we'll hear from Terry Bristol, who's the Chief Operating Officer of the Air Traffic Organization, or what will be referred to as the ATO from the FAA, and Pamela Whitley, who's the Assistant Administrator for NextGen. They're appearing jointly and they'll divide their time. Then Russell Childs, who's the chair of what we call the NAC, the NextGen Advisory Committee. Then follow that with Sharon Pinkerton, who's the Senior Vice President of Legislative and Regulatory Policy from Airlines for America. Then Paul Rinaldi, who is the President of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, or NATCA. And then follow that up with Captain Bob Fox, First Vice President of the Airline Pilots Association, or ALPA. The reason I'm saying the full names and then the acronyms is because I'll be referring to them by acronyms later on, and I don't have to put a quarter in the jar for acronyms anymore. So that's why I'm doing it. So, and then we'll open up for questions. So with that, let's first hear from Mr. Soskin, the IG from the DOT. You got about 5 minutes.
Chairman Larson, Ranking Member Graves, Chairman DeFazio, colleagues on this panel, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to join you virtually today in this roundtable format to talk about air traffic control modernization, including FAA's progress in implementing upgrades under the NextGen umbrella. As you know, NextGen's portfolio of programs is intended to enhance aircraft operations and foster industry growth by implementing new air traffic control technologies and capabilities. However, obtaining the expected benefits depends on FAA's successful delivery of initiatives and capabilities beyond those already completed. The DOT Office of Inspector General has a long-standing body of work evaluating FAA's progress and challenges with modernizing our air traffic system. Since 2006, DOT OIG has published more than 30 related audit reports and letters, testified before this subcommittee numerous times, and made hundreds of recommendations on how to improve FAA's management and oversight, most of which FAA agreed to implement. Over the last decade, FAA and industry have invested significantly in next-gen programs and equipage, and FAA has deployed much of the needed infrastructure, as well as some new capabilities. However, FAA has faced and continues to face challenges that have postponed or limited some of the expected benefits of these investments. For example, FAA's Metroplex program. It aims to implement performance-based navigation, or PBN, for arrivals and departures in busy metropolitan areas. PBN was expected to yield significant benefits such as fuel savings and reduced congestion. However, as a result of program delays and unresolved obstacles, FAA's estimated annual benefits for Metroplex are now only about half of the minimum amount initially expected. In another example, FAA's NAS voice switch program to implement digital voice switches will likely be delayed well beyond the original 2025 completion date. FAA terminated the voice switch contract in December 2018 and is only in the early stages of developing a replacement. Despite these and other challenges, NextGen is still expected to provide a positive return on investment. But as my office reported in March, FAA's projection for total NextGen benefits by 2030 has declined substantially over time. FAA's projected benefits are now tens of billions of dollars less than their peak projection, and FAA has also extended the time frame for achieving benefits. NextGen benefits will be less than expected, in part because the original projections were based on optimistic assumptions and were not adjusted for risk. For example, when air traffic did not grow as anticipated, neither did the expected benefits, especially those related to the projected time savings for passengers. NextGen's benefits have been delayed for other reasons, most recently by COVID-19 and its unprecedented impacts on air traffic, passenger levels, and program implementation. For example, reduced air traffic limits the benefits realized from PBN. Continuing work to implement NextGen initiatives has also been affected, including a delay of more than a year on FAA's Datacom program, which enables digital text communication between controllers and flight crew. Nonetheless, the next-gen portfolio holds continuing promise, so long as FAA takes advantage of opportunities to apply the lessons learned from the last 15 years of ATC modernization activities. Realizing next-gen benefits requires continuing buy-in from aviation stakeholders, like those represented here today. As such, developing and publishing metrics that measure next-gen performance can help FAA set expectations, improve transparency, and help secure industry's long-term investment. Further advancing next-gen will depend on demonstrating benefits to stakeholders, integrating next-gen's interdependent capabilities, and harnessing controller automation tools and training to achieve more benefits. Much has been done, and much remains to be done to realize the vision of a modernized air traffic control system with its expected benefits for safety and efficiency. Thank you again for inviting me to participate in today's roundtable. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Soskin. And now I'll turn to both Terry Bristol, CEO of the ATO, and Pamela Whitley. And I understand you're going to split your time, so I'll turn to Ms. Bristol first.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Larson. Good morning, everyone. For those whom I haven't had an opportunity to meet, I'm Terry Bristol, the Chief Operating Officer of the FAA's Air Traffic Organization. As COO, my most important job is to ensure that the National Airspace System, or the NAS, as we refer to it, provides the gold standard in air navigation and aviation safety services for the U.S. every day. I also need to say right up front that the FAA, the aviation stakeholders, and the nation have had to endure, adapt, and overcome the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Through it all, we've provided the nation essential, nearly uninterrupted air traffic control services through the darkest days of the pandemic. We're proud of our accomplishments, but also realize that ensuring essential air traffic services requires us to follow the health advice of our FAA flight surgeon in interpreting national, state, and local guidance, which forced us to limit access to our FAA field facilities beyond essential employees. COVID's also been a barrier to next-gen implementation by preventing face-to-face engagements at our field facilities. We're all anxious to continue the momentum in implementing our next-gen portfolio of programs. Over this last year, our workforce has looked for creative ways to move the NAS modernization forward. We've employed virtual remote capabilities for everything from system testing to conducting safety panels and site surveys. We've made great progress staging work to prepare for on-site activities at our air traffic operational facilities. With respect to the controller workforce, training, certification, and user acceptance are the linchpins for implementation. We're starting to schedule some test and training activities at our FAA Technical Center for Terminal Flight Data Manager and Datacom, and more programs are soon to follow. As national vaccine rates steadily climb and infection rates steadily fall, we're already positioning ourselves to rapidly reinstate activities necessary to redeploy these systems. And it's our commitment that we will continue to lean in as far as we possibly can, mindful of the safety of our workforce. There's still much to do to achieve all of the modernization benefits of NextGen, and we're eager to fully operationalize NextGen, and we fully encourage stakeholders to equip to the MCL level to achieve all the benefits that are possible. We will never take our eye off the ball to ensure that this complex national airspace system remains the gold standard as the safest, able to accommodate a host of new users, and the most capable airspace system in the world. So thank you.
Thank you. And before Ms. Whitley speaks, we have a special announcement from Garrett Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to quickly make mention that Ms. Whitley and I share a hometown, and she is a product of Southern University, a great institution in Baton Rouge, and just want welcome her here today and urge everyone to pay a special attention because clearly with that kind of background, she's got some great wisdom.
Ms. Whitley.
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Graves. Good morning. My name is Pamela Whitley, and I am the FAA Assistant Administrator for NextGen. It is good to be with you today to provide an update on the progress we have made with the implementation of the Next Generation Air Transportation System, or as we all know it, NextGen. NextGen is delivering a modernized air traffic management system for the National Airspace System, which we refer to as the NAS. This modernization is making our system safer and even more capable of accommodating air travel now and in the future. Government and stakeholder collaboration has allowed us to put in place the majority of the NextGen foundational infrastructure on our way to a more dynamic system. This infrastructure includes 21st century technology that enables digital communications between controllers and pilots, precise navigation of aircraft, near real-time surveillance showing aircraft position, along with advanced automation. All of this is operational today. Our focus now is getting these proven capabilities in the right places. To highlight two of our major accomplishments, we have fully deployed ADS-B out capabilities, and data communication tower services are available at 62 major airports. Continued progress and delivery of NextGen benefits will only be possible through consistent engagement with our stakeholders. We have been successful using the 30-member NextGen Advisory Committee as our forum for collaboration. These individuals are asked to help us get a consensus view of industry's priorities and to help gain support of their organizations to commit to necessary actions. An example of successful collaboration is the publication of the NextGen Minimum Capabilities List, referred to as the MCL, which resulted in a common understanding of the relationship between NextGen capabilities, air carrier investment in aircraft equipage, and benefits. Because this recommendation is directly related to industry's investment in equipage, I believe it will be recorded as one of the most important recommendations we have received from the NAC. NextGen has delivered $7 billion in benefits to date, and we forecast benefits to grow to approximately $100 billion in the 2030 timeframe. Benefits growth will continue with expansion of NextGen capabilities, with air carrier investments to increase NextGen equipage in their fleets, and with greater usage of NextGen capabilities. In summary, to date, our NextGen modernization efforts have delivered 21st century technology that makes our system safer and more efficient. Collaboration and support of this committee has been essential to our NextGen accomplishments. The FAA remains committed to leveraging new and innovative concepts and technologies to continuously modernize the U.S. air transportation system. Thank you for your time today and for the opportunity to provide this update.
Thank you, Ms. Whitley. And turn now to Chair Russell Childs, or Chip Childs, he goes by, NextGen Advisory Committee. Chip.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. I'm Chip Childs, President and CEO of SkyWest and Chair of the NAC. I've been on the NAC for the past 6 years and nearly 2 years as chairman. I had the privilege of taking the chairman position just prior to the pandemic, so much of our work has been virtual. Still, during this time, we've made significant strides to advance the NextGen priorities and advise the FAA. Recently, the NAC tackled some of the most difficult barriers to full NextGen implementation, including developing a NextGen avionics minimum capabilities list, continuing to resolve long-standing avionics issues around data communications, providing NAC consensus on priorities for new performance-based navigation procedures. I believe that with the wide range of equipment across the industry, gaining a consensus on the minimum capabilities list has been one of the NAC's most important contributions. This includes baseline equipage on navigation, datacom, surveillance with ADS-B out, which is complete, and resiliency equipage. The minimum capabilities list is foundational to the joint FAA and NAC understanding of aircraft avionics equipage and the operationalizing next-gen flight standards and our efforts to modernize the airspace. Only as we reach the minimum capabilities list baseline will we truly realize the benefits of next-gen across aviation. We know that varying avionics equipage or mixed equipage remains one of our largest challenges to realizing a next-gen airspace, and we still have many barriers to overcome. There's no silver bullet, but significant financial barriers must be addressed for industry manufacturers and avionics providers to collectively achieve equipage to the baseline minimum capabilities list. Regional fleets are known as a significant challenge, but it's worth noting that major carriers own almost half the regional fleet in the industry. Help with infrastructure spending would provide critical support to help move this initiative forward. Safety remains foundational to our NAC work. The NAC is advising the FAA on many issues that will increase safety, including but not limited to performance-based navigation, which increases safety by employing precise satellite-based aircraft navigation routes and procedures, and data communication, which increases safety by employing digital clearances that load into the aircraft management computers to reduce the risk of misinterpreting voice air clearances. Environment and sustainability are also critical areas of focus at the NAC. The NAC is advising on flight profiles, procedures, and avionics that allow aircraft to use less power on descents and precision satellite-based navigation routings, which will shorten flights and avoid noise-sensitive areas on the ground, resulting in reduced greenhouse gas emissions. 2020 will be remembered as one of the most difficult years for aviation, our nation, and the world. Despite this chaotic environment, in the pandemic, NAC members continued our work and deliberation to move the next-gen work forward. They never wavered in their conviction that the aviation industry will emerge from this crisis and will need all of the next-gen programs implemented to ensure the national airspace will be even more safe and efficient. I will also commend the FAA for their ongoing engagement in the NAC throughout the pandemic, as they've worked with us to press forward with NAC's next-gen priorities. We've got to get everyone back in their field offices and facilities, and I know the FAA understands how important that is. We've also been supportive of ensuring that the priority is the health and safety of all of our professionals and our customers, as well as the economic recovery of the airline industry. In summary, the NAC has advised several key taskings in recent years, even through the course of the global pandemic. As we emerge from the pandemic, we are anxious to advance next-gen priorities. The minimum capabilities list is a big milestone, but equipage to the baseline minimum capabilities list, which truly is essential to a successful next-gen implementation, needs help through infrastructure spending. This help would remove some potentially otherwise insurmountable barriers we face today, as well as speed the effort toward eliminating baseline missed equipage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll now turn to Sharon Pinkerton from A4A. Ms. Pinkerton, you're recognized.
Good morning, and thank you for having this roundtable, especially coming on the heels of your roundtable on sustainable aviation fuels recently. We need to make progress on both NextGen and SAF as early levers we can pull to make sure our air traffic control system is helping, not hindering, the climate challenge we're all trying to solve. Before I begin in earnest, I want to recognize that sometimes when we have these next-gen discussions, we can sound more critical than clinical toward FAA, and that is not our intent. We respect and appreciate the work of both the leadership at FAA and the air traffic controllers and other frontline workers who have gotten us through these very difficult COVID times. And speaking of frontline workers, a strong thank you to all of you for providing the CARES payroll support program. We simply wouldn't be here where we are today without that payroll assistance. My message today is this: we have to accelerate modernizing our air traffic control system. The upside of making progress and using the 21st century technologies is critical. Under the Obama administration, the Future of Aviation Commission estimated that a modernized ATC system could reduce fuel burn and therefore reduce emissions by up to 12%. That is significant. As you all know, US carriers recently upped our climate ambition, and we've set 2 new goals: net zero emissions by 2050, and second, 2 billion gallons of SAF by 2030. Frankly, without Congress and the administration partnering with us on both SAF and greening the ATC system, we won't make it. My simplified view of where we are with NextGen versus where we need to go is this. The FAA has mostly laid the foundation for the key communications, navigation, and surveillance capabilities. The challenge now is to operationalize and use those capabilities so that we're actually flying more precise and efficient routes and emitting fewer greenhouse gases into the environment. I think the Inspector General's report is instructive, noting that the FAA has really struggled with the shift from planning NextGen to actually using the new capabilities. We also believe that as Congress and the administration consider a once-in-a-generation infrastructure proposal, we do have a unique opportunity to accelerate the use of key technologies and actually realize the climate benefits of more direct and efficient routings and new infrastructure. I'm pleased to say, and I hope you've received this morning, that a broad group of labor, industry, and consumer groups have coalesced around a green aviation infrastructure needs list. These priority programs and asks will yield benefits for all parts of the aviation community, as well as the traveling and shipping public. Critically will help green our nation's air traffic control system. One of the issues policymakers to address that Chip just talked about is what is commonly referred to as mixed equipage, something identified by the IG as a key impediment to NextGen benefits. Mixed equipage simply refers to the fact that not all aircraft have the same avionics capabilities. We are encouraging policymakers to make a one-time investment of approximately $1.5 billion to establish an equipage grant program to provide the incentives necessary to equip all aircraft with avionics to meet that minimum capability threshold that was discussed. This investment would level the avionics playing field and get that last mile of equipage on board to simplify controller decisions, allowing them to optimize air traffic tools and making the airspace more efficient and climate friendly. The other key programs we encourage the committee to consider focusing on are the need to accelerate performance-based navigation implementation. Second, implementing en route datacom. We commend the FAA for the work they've done on tower datacom. We need to accelerate implementation of space-based oceanic surveillance for more efficient routings over the ocean. Taken together, we believe these investments would refocus NextGen and truly deliver safer and more efficient operations, create a better experience for passengers and the shipping public, while helping us meet our shared climate goals. If climate is truly a high priority, we need to find a decisive and impactful forward way on both sustainable aviation fuels and NextGen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pinkerton. Appreciate that very much. And I'll now turn to Paul Rinaldi, who's the president of NATCA. Mr. Rinaldi.
Morning. Thank you, Chairman DeFazio, Chairman Lawson, Ranking Member Graves, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity for me to participate in this roundtable on behalf of nearly 20,000 aviation safety professionals that NATCA represents. Over the years, we have highlighted that a stop and go funding stream will negatively affect the aspects of our national airspace system. It undermines air traffic control services, staffing, hiring, training, timely implementation of long-term modernization projects. It affects preventive maintenance to FAA physical infrastructure. And as we're recovering from that long government shutdown in 2019, we then faced the unthinkable, the situation of COVID-19 and the pandemic. That pandemic has devastated the aviation system worldwide, including all the things that I just mentioned that are impacted by the stop and go funding. You know, over the last 15 months, the FAA and NATCA, through collaboration, have accomplished some remarkable things to keep the frontline workforce safe and the aviation system up and running. Now, with a vaccinated workforce and traffic levels returning to roughly 80% of pre-pandemic levels, out of the chaos of COVID-19, we have an historic opportunity to invest in our nation's aviation system in both technology and physical infrastructure to ensure the US remains the gold standard in aviation worldwide. The FAA's physical infrastructure needs attention. Our en route centers are almost 60 years old. Many towers and TRACONs are in need of repair and replacement. Many of these facilities have exceeded their life expectancy. Some of these facilities need critical replacement of systems such as roofs and windows and HVAC systems and elevators and plumbing. As far as NextGen, NACA has been collaborating with the FAA for the last 12 years for modernization of NextGen. We have had many successes and we anticipate many more. Moving forward, our top priorities are to maintain and upgrade our automation platforms, including ERAM and TAMRA and ATOP, which is our oceanic procedures. Some of our other priorities are to replace replacement for micro EARTs, enhancement of long-range radar surveillance, voice communication systems, NOTAMs, support tools in automation and decision-making. NACA strongly supports Chairman DeFazio's Surface Transportation Bill, the Moving Forward Act. I thank you for the opportunity to participate today, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Rinaldi. And now we're going to turn to Captain Bob Fox, the first Vice President of the Airline Pilots Association. And then just a heads up, the first set of questions will be from Chair DeFazio and Ranking Member Garrett Graves. I'm gonna defer till later. So just get ready for that. Captain Fox.
Yes,
please.
Thank you, Chairman Larson and Chairman DeFazio and Ranking Member Graves and everyone. I want to start by the same thing that Sharon said. Thanks you so much for the payroll support program that was passed, saving thousands of jobs and literally kept those crew members on the payroll, recurrent training, so that now as the flights are starting to come back, they are all in position to bring the transportation system back to where it was and the economy back to where it was. So big thank you there. I'm going to be brief. I'm here today as an operator as I see this. I heard the discussion of how long this has been going on. I upgraded to captain at United Airlines in 2005. I was a user of the system for many, many years until I was elected to this job a couple of years ago, which I am now a member of the NextGen Advisory Subcommittee. And as you know, Joe DePete's a member of the actual committee itself. We are proud, the Airline Pilots Association are proud to be stakeholders in this discussion. And we thank you for us having this here. We also keep an eye on the ball as things move along to what threats are out there. Threats concerning, do the aircraft have the proper equipment to fly in performance-based navigation procedures? Where are the cybersecurity threats out there? And how is the GPS system being affected by maybe the 5G network and other things? So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Chairman Larson. And like I said, I'm here as an operator today that has flown in the system, especially in the Northeast and on the East Coast for many, many years as this has unfolded.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder, folks, this is a roundtable, so we really don't have a 5-minute clock. But you're not on your own. I'll be politely interrupting you, but not gaveling you down. As well, because it's a roundtable, we're not doing it in seniority order. It's being done, except for the first couple, it's being done by when you raise your hand. So in order, I have Pete, then Garrett, and then Julia Brownlee and Jeff Van Drew. Those will be the first 4. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chair DeFazio, who of course has no clock. Of course.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. One of the key things is dealing with the minimum separation that we've implemented in right now, Boston and Seattle. I guess you're working on Oakland. This is to Ms. Bristol and Ms. Whitley. When can we expect, first off, when is Oakland going to be completed? And secondly, when and how quickly can we expand this? This is obviously one key part of potential fuel and cost savings. Ms. Whitley? Ms. Bristol?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair DeFazio. So for the end state of NextGen and dynamic TBO capabilities, we will use that advanced aircraft and ground automation to enable our flight-specific time-based solutions. We began utilizing ADS-B to enable 3 nautical mile separation standards in the en route airspace at or below flight level 230, where it wasn't available before. In 2019, the FAA approved reduced separation standard from the 5 nautical miles to 3 nautical miles at or below flight level 230 for those ADS-B out-equipped aircraft. In 2020, the 3 nautical mile separation was successfully deployed at 2 key sites, as you indicated, Seattle and Boston. So moving forward, in response to Section 547 from the 2018 reauthorization, we will be initiating 3 next-gen equipage trials to utilize the 3 nautical mile separation for select en route sectors within Oakland Air Traffic Control Center to provide operational access, flight efficiencies, and airspace throughput for the Bay Area. And that will run for a period of 2 years. We'll be assessing that, and then we'll be looking for other opportunities to do the same thing in other facilities across the country.
Well, I guess the question would be why does it take, I mean, why do you have to test it for 2 years? You've already implemented it in 2 places. And then secondly, how are we going to deal with the mixed equipage issue?
Well, it's a good point, because mixed equipage does certainly it can cause challenges there. The opportunity with doing this as Section 547 will be able to zero in directly on those equipped aircraft and offer them that 3-mile separation. The agency will be able to monitor the benefits that are coming along with that, so that we can assess what the opportunities are. We will, how we assess what the numbers prove out for us, both for pro and con, because if it's in a mixed equipage environment, that may become a challenge as well. But we'll be able to better see as we step forward where those other opportunities are in airspace where we can capitalize on this more quickly.
Okay, so if we had a line of 6 aircraft coming in and one of them isn't equipped, couldn't they just make that one circle and go to the end of the line and observe the longer separation? I mean, how are you going to deal with that? And I would want to ask Paul about what he thinks about that too.
Right. Well, so what may happen is that they will have a different trajectory, and they won't be in the line that has the reduced separation. They will be doing traditional separation.
Okay, Paul, what do you think? How much is that going to complicate the work of your folks?
It will complicate it as we look at different levels of separation. We can do it, but we have to change the philosophy, right? We've been at a philosophical first come, first serve air traffic control system to best equip, serve. So we have to really work on that, retrain that. And as Terry Bristol said, it would be a different path that the non-equipped airplane would take. It wouldn't be as direct. So maybe not circling, but maybe a circuitous route to the approach.
Okay, so that wouldn't take any administrative rule or anything. That would just be a training issue.
Well, we would need a real philosophy change of best equipped, best served. We don't have that yet.
Okay, Ms. Bristol, what about that? When are we going to provide that?
Well, that is one of the benefits of doing these trials through Section 547. So that reauth provision really does support best equipped, best served. and helping to promote the benefits of equipped aircraft and taking advantage of these advanced capabilities and procedures in the NAS. So we're very supportive of that.
Okay, just one last question, Mr. Chairman, if you would. Ms. Pinkerton, unfortunately, I wasn't briefed by staff before this, so I don't know whether we have had a response to the questions that we sent to A4A on your request for the $1.5 billion for equipage. We had a number of questions and concerns about how you reach that number, what planes would be equipped, when those planes are expected to be retired, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't know if you responded yet or not.
Yes, we have, and happy to provide that to you directly as well.
All right, well, I'll get the staff to provide it then. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Garrett Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bristow, in my opening comments, I made mention of two studies that the FAA reauthorization bill in 2018 required. One of them was a Section 502 study that relates to air modernization and specifically looking at past, present, and future of next generation, the next gen system, excuse me, and how we're basically going to modernize the national airspace. Could you give an update on the status of that report that's now 2 years late?
Ranking Member Graves, I'll provide an answer to that question for you.
Thank you.
We continue to work on that report. We understand that it's a priority, and we are refining that now, and hope we'll be able to get it to you pretty soon.
Can you give me any brackets on time frame? Pretty soon means a week to a month. It means 6 months to a year.
We would think that we would get it to you within the next 6 months.
The FAA this month has indicated that I believe they're 98.8% through some of the commitments they made to the advisory committee, the Next Gen Advisory Committee. Can you talk a little bit about, one of you talk a little bit about when were these commitments assumed by the FAA, what the 1.2% of remaining items looks like, and are there any, I guess, new commitments beyond the ones that were referenced in the 98.8% commitment that you all are working on?
Yes, so working through the Next Gen Advisory Committee, we work each year on a set of commitments based on the 4 priority areas that we established with them back in 2016, I think it was. So we work in the area of data communications, our surface and data sharing activities, PBN, multiple runway operations, and the Northeast Corridor. And our experts, along with the industry experts, sit down each year and we come up with a set of milestones. There are a set of government milestones and a set of industry milestones. So that set of commitments is actually updated each year. So the statistics are that you have are from last year, and we're currently working on an update now to establish the commitments for the coming year.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Mr. Chairman, last question for Ms. Pinkerton. Ms. Pinkerton, as we've watched the Next Gen rollout, you've often heard accomplishments touted whenever milestones were hit or different technology put in place. But in looking at, I guess, the real outcome of some of those announcements, it's been difficult to really quantify any real benefits. And I'm just wondering if you and your members share those concerns that while, you know, milestones or different technologies are being implemented, there really hasn't been a quantifiable sort of benefit to the flying public. Is that a concern that you share?
Yes, I would say that is a concern. I want to make clear we have seen benefits in certain areas. For example, you know, Datacom that's been rolled out in the tower environment and it's being used there. We've seen benefits with that program. You know, PBN, some of our CEOs I've heard say they're only using those procedures in 5% of their approaches. And so I think, you know, and listen, 4 years ago, we wrote a 3-page manifesto on why we didn't think the benefits were being delivered. But, you know, frankly, we're at the place where we just want to see progress, frankly, and some of these critical programs. So we're less about arguing about, you know, is it 200 billion and 100 billion and getting into the passenger value of time, and more about trying to focus on our priority programs and how we can make progress in having those programs actually be used. And I've actually heard Administrator Dixon say that he understands that as well, that while the foundation of capabilities have been laid, the challenge is to operationalize these capabilities to deliver benefits.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm watching my clock closely there, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut down. But I do just want to say that I think this does cause some concern about the confidence that we have and the industry has in the ability to actually implement the program and realize the benefits. Yield back.
Your self-discipline is envious. Now turn to Representative Brownlee and followed by Representative Andrew. Julia, go ahead.
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Ms. Pinkerton, I don't have a question for you, but I just want to thank you for the plug on SAF and agree with you wholeheartedly that SAF and this next gen implementation is critical to reaching the goals we all want to attain.
Thank you for your leadership.
Yep, thanks. To the FAA, you know, I know that this is extraordinarily complex, and I can't say that I fully understand all of the details in order to get to where we want to get, and certainly we want to maintain you know, being the gold standard for the world. So I just want to keep it really, really simple so that I'm clear. So, you know, there's been a lot of shifts in timelines, et cetera, but can you, and I'm a firm believer, you can't get to a place unless you have clear goals and objectives. So I just want to know, when can we expect Next Gen to be fully operational? It's just a simple answer in terms of what you're striving for.
What I'd like to just kind of share with you is the foundational infrastructure, which includes the programs that we committed to modernize communication, navigation, and surveillance are basically completed in terms of knowing what those systems are. We continue to manage those programs to deploy them to get them to the right places. So in large part, the concepts are complete. The remaining work is operationalize it and getting those things implemented in the right locations in the National Airspace System.
And when do you think that will happen? When do you, what are you striving for? When do you hope that that will all be complete? The operational side.
The operational side, what I will say, and I'll ask Terry to chime in, it's very location specific. All of our programs have implementation schedules that tell us what sites they're going to and when those capabilities will be deployed at that site. You know, in a big picture time frame, we think in the 2030 time frame, most of the capabilities will be out there and delivering benefits.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're focused, we've mentioned operationalizing Next Gen a couple of times now, but the reason it's important is it's not about just publishing a procedure or a capability like a terminal spacing and sequencing or some of these other tools we have. We have to get into our facilities, work with controllers, and help it to stick. I mean, we track, I have the utilization numbers for PBN procedures today. We've got 9,600 PBN procedures that are in the NAS today out of 21,000 procedures that pilots can use in our system. We track those utilization numbers. So at our core 30 airports, from April of 2020 to 2021, the arrival PBM procedures are being utilized about 87% of the time. On the departure side for PBM procedures, it's about 67%. So, what we're trying to get in and make sure is that as we deploy these additional tools, controllers know how to use them. Where you are in the NAS matters. If you have adjacent centers, if you're sitting in Cleveland, you want to work with Washington Center, you want to work with Kansas City Center. And so we're trying to ensure that the whole system is working. We're not excelling in just one part of the system. So it's a pretty complicated endeavor, but these are the things that we're focused on now. And unfortunately, when COVID hit, it threw a big wrench in because we were poised to get out with Datacom en route. We were well on our way. We had 3 centers under our belt. TFDM, we would have been operational last year in our first location, which is Phoenix, and now that'll be next year in the spring. So, but it's a system of systems and helping people understand how they all work together to get the most out of it.
Yeah, I get all of that. I really do, and I know it's extraordinarily complex. And I'm not trying to oversimplify the complexities here. I'm just really trying to get at what FAA really does believe that they will be fully operational. So, but I hear you, and I just want to ask one other quick question, Mr. Chairman, and I will yield back. And this is to the Inspector General. Since the implementation of the Southern California Metroplex redesign, I've heard from many of my constituents about aircraft noise in their neighborhoods. This, I'm sure, is going to be an ongoing issue. But my question is, does the OIG's analysis of economic impacts on NextGen include any assessments on noise impacts?
Thank you for the question, Representative Brownlee, and for raising the impacts on your district. I think my mother actually used to live in your district in Thousand Oaks a number of years ago, and so I'm familiar with some of those noise concerns. Now, in our work, we have recognized the impact of noise and noise concerns in our Metroplex implementation audit, and recognize that's been one of the sources of delay for procedures and Metroplex benefits. We haven't done any work specifically on the issue of noise at this point. So I don't have any details about the value or impacts of noise to share with you.
Okay. And just if you've done any auditing, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thanks,
Thank
Julia.
you. Yeah.
Thanks. We're going with Jeff Van Drew, followed by Steve Lynch. Jeff, Representative Van Drew.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad that we're having this roundtable. I appreciate leadership putting this together. This is an important topic. For those of you who don't know, South Jersey is home to the William J. Hughes Technical Center, which I'm very proud of. It's the FAA's cutting-edge research facility where they developed the NextGen program and many other programs. For more than 6 decades, the Technical Center has served as FAA's independent laboratory and the national scientific test base for research, development, test, and evaluation. Its historical role in advancing air transportation is well established and is very unique. The Tech Center Director is the FAA's executive responsible for cultivating and sustaining the center and its laboratories, its technical work, and its scientific staff, and collaborating with industry, academia, and regional communities. So my question would be to both Ms. Bristol and Ms. Whitley, how do you expect to leverage the Technical Center's leadership and world-class capabilities to achieve the FAA's final vision here of NextGen and future enhancements that could take place?
Thank you for that question. As you stated, we're very proud of the work that happens at the Tech Center. It's a world-class center and basically one of a kind in the world. There we're able to do research on new technology, new concepts, we research engines, and the work we've done there has really led to the safety standards that we have today that make our system the safest in the world. We envision to continue to do that. We do work there to evaluate new concepts. Just recently during the COVID challenges, we were able to stand up software testing capabilities that allowed us to do software testing virtually with some of the vendors that are building systems. So we expect that the Tech Center will remain the core of how we actually evaluate technologies before they're completely deployed in the national airspace system.
Yeah. And I would only add to that it really is a premier facility. We travel in the air traffic organization. We bring controllers in for testing on all sorts of programs that we have. We shake those systems down, and it really is a facility where we've been able to do that. And I know that with Pam's leadership, they'll continue to evolve the capabilities at that technical center.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate your commitment to it. We are indeed very proud of it and proud of the work that you all do there, and hope to really continue into the future and do and accomplish just some amazing technology and some amazing changes. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is that it, Jeff?
That's it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. I will note, we didn't go this year because of the pandemic, but I would like to get back up to the Tech Center. We do a kind of a mini Codel with members, and they put on a great show for members to show the research from everything from how they clear out the airspace for commercial rocket launches to how they test fire suppression systems and new materials to make planes safer. It's really a great show and tell kind of day, and helps you understand a little bit more about the kind of work and research that has to go into making an airplane fly safely. So
we would love to have you. We would love to have you.
We'll wait for the signal that it's okay to travel, and we'll do it.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Good. I want to turn to Representative Lynch from Massachusetts, and then after Lynch will be Troy Nails, Representative Nails. Steve Lynch.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. Thank you so much for visiting the FAA Tech Center along with Chairman Larson and Chairman DeFazio. So I agree, some wonderful and talented people there. However, also refer to it as the scene of the crime. We have Next Gen in Boston, and here's my problem. Right now, the Next Gen process brings all these planes over thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of flights over the same houses every single day. So the people that are trying to get Next Gen in their airports, think long and hard about that, and maybe my situation will shed a little light on it. My situation is I have a very old airport layout. Boston Municipal Airport, now called Logan Airport, was originally established in 1923. Wilbur was still alive. Wilbur Wright was still alive. Orville had passed away. He passed away young. But the thrust on the aircraft at that time required us to lay out the runways so that it used the maximum wind velocity to get those planes up. We're talking about the Fokker T2. I think it had like, 800 horsepower or something like that. Today, we have a much different situation. We have, you've got 200,000 pounds of thrust in, a 747. So, but we still have the same layouts, and the layouts are over the neighborhoods and over the towns and over the people. Meanwhile, we have an ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and the planes don't use that. So that's my problem. So I'm asking the FAA to support my effort. I've got a study proposed to look at reconfiguring our runways so they go over the water. It's simple. We redo these runways on occasion. We just did one about a year and a half ago. So we could optimize the use of next gen and also give some relief to those long suffering constituents of mine. I mean, I live next to the airport. I don't think I can escape it. I can tell when the passenger has their tray in the upright position as they go over my house. There's no hope for me, but for a lot of these other towns that are on the runway on the way into Logan Airport, we can help them. And you know what? It's going to help with optimizing the number of flights that we get into Logan Airport. And there are dozens of major cities located on the west and east coast that are confronted with this problem. So I've got a study request in to look at optimizing over the water approach and departure from Logan International Airport. And I would like the help of the FAA to consider that. We got to think outside the box. Otherwise, there's going to be violent opposition to bringing in some of this new aircraft and increasing the volume of air traffic, which we have to do. They're going to shut that airport off, and they're going to try to build an airport somewhere else, which is hugely costly and ineffective. And there's a much cheaper and I think a more satisfying solution by looking at what we're doing right now. So that's all I got. And look, I know we have some wonderful people at the FAA, and you're trying to do the right thing and make sure. And our air traffic controllers, God bless you. Yeah, I realize you're trying to make things as safe as you can for the flying public. But I also know the FAA is keenly interested in reducing the amount of air fuel, jet fuel we use as a way of saving money for the airlines. And there's got to be a trade-off here, hopefully for the benefit of the people who live under this air traffic. So I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Appreciate the comments. I'm going to turn now, and I have in order Representative Nails from Texas, and I have Representative Holmes Norton, Congresswoman Holmes Norton, if she returns. If not, it will be Representative Titus, unless Holmes Norton returns. So I'll go with Representative Nails, Texas.
Chairman Larson, Ranking Member Graves, I want to thank you both for your leadership here today. And my question is geared towards Captain Fox. Captain Fox, in your opinion, what has NextGen done to improve flight performance for our pilots? And what advancements have yet to be implemented that would improve things further?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. So clearly, as the operator up front, when I first started flying, we were flying VORs across the country, right? And NextGen has allowed us to now take the most efficient.
Captain Fox, could you, for those of us who aren't pilots, could you say what a VOR is, please?
Okay, I'm sorry, Chairman Larson. So it's a device on the ground. I don't know what it stands for. It's a device on the ground that puts out a signal, and you would dial in the frequency, let's say 123.1, and the needle would point you into that direction. And you would fly across the country from one receiver to the next. And they were located in different parts of the country. Now with performance-based navigation, you can actually take the most efficient route across the country, which also includes when the airlines look at that, they look at the winds, of course, at loft, and they look at the radar. But clearly that has been a benefit. I'll make it quick though. Where is the real issues at? The real issues is, number one, not all of our aircraft are equipped the same. And so not all of our aircraft can take advantage of the capabilities out there. And that primarily leads into the arrivals of our big hub airports, right? Where our big hub airports, they have a lot of arrivals, one after another. And some of the aircraft going in there don't have the same equipment, the modern equipment. And as a result, Paul can talk about this more. The space needs to be a little bit further apart, and the efficiency of that arrival does not happen. The second piece, though, is the Metroplex piece, which was brought up earlier. I flew a lot out of New York City, both Kennedy, LaGuardia, and Newark. And I'll just use Newark as an example. You come into the arrival on Newark, and because of the complexity of that air system, you are vectored down to almost 3,000 feet and told to take a southerly heading. And they sometimes take you all the way down past Atlantic City before they can even turn you back around to get you going north toward the airport and land. And if you think about that, we're burning a lot of fuel at 3,000 feet, producing a lot of carbon. And until we get that resolved and get that Metroplex system resolved, the efficiencies that we're looking for our passengers and the reduction in carbon is just not going to get there, in my opinion.
Thank you, Captain Fox. Chairman Larson, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question and your participation. Appreciate it. I don't see that Representative Holmes Thornton is back, so I'll go now to Representative Titus from Nevada.
Thank you, Mr. Larson, Mr. Chairman. We recently had a hearing about examining innovations in the aerospace industry, and I represent a district in Nevada that's really a test bed for a lot of new technology, especially in the mobility space. We got the Virgin Hyperloop, and we got autonomous shuttle buses, and a lot of UAS drone companies, a testing center for those there in the state. Now we've got another player with this advanced air mobility technology, and companies seem anxious to be developing this. So this is a new challenge to our air traffic management. Now, a lot of these vehicles are going to be kind of operating outside the usual flight path. So I would ask Administrator Whitley and Mr. Rinaldi if they would discuss these, how these emerging technologies are going to integrate into the existing system, and if there are things that our subcommittee needs to be doing or examining that can help make that process easier. In the past, when we dealt with drones, we seemed to be behind the curve. Canada, Australia, Europe, they all got ahead of us, and the technology developed faster than we could keep up with it with oversight or regulation or just accommodation. So maybe we could try to get ahead of this instead of behind it. Would y'all address that for me?
Yes, thank you, Representative Titus. We are currently working with the industry to understand their plans to develop new technology. And you mentioned the new types of vehicles. Much of that work requires government and private partnership because they are responsible for the vehicles. The FAA regulatory community will work with them on certification of those vehicles to make sure that they're safe. And in our research program, we actually research the concepts that they want to use, where they want to fly, how they want to fly them, and work to provide the right type of tools and technology to support integration of that. So we would need to know what they want to do in the airspace, when they want to do those things in the airspace, how they plan to use them in the airspace, so we can make sure that we have the appropriate data to integrate into our appropriate system to support air traffic operations. So I'll share with Paul because we've done some demonstrations there to help inform those requirements.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question, Congressman Tex. You know, I think the first step is to segregate them out of the current air traffic flow and see exactly what the behavior is of these, whether it's a drone or whether it is an unmanned vehicle that is, airward mobility, whatever that situation is a segregated corridor away from actual movement of air traffic control and bifurcate that out and see the behaviors of these new entrants and what to expect. And through time and the history of what to expect from them, then we can actually integrate it through into our aviation system. But it's something that we have to be very cautious of, especially if the controllers won't be able to communicate with the vehicle and be able to know exactly where that vehicle is going. It's very hard to separate from something that you don't know where it's going or what's happening.
I think it's going to be a real challenge. It's going to be a challenge of process and communication as well as infrastructure. what do we need to put in place at our airports that will be able to try to accommodate the things that you're just talking about? Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to working on this issue and pursuing it with the subcommittee.
Thank you, Representative Titus. I appreciate it. Next up, we'll have Representative Van Dyne from Texas and be followed by Representative Kahale from Hawaii. Beth?
Thank you very much, Chairman Larson and Ranking Member Graves, for holding this roundtable. I'm concerned that the FAA claims NextGen and its benefits are on target when the IG report shows the opposite. They've been working on NextGen now for 13, 15 years. And when I talk to stakeholders, I continue to hear about inefficiencies. Specifically, the Internal General looked at taxi times and delays from 2008 to 2019 across the NAS for the 24 largest domestic airlines, including American Airlines and Southwest Airlines. American is headquartered in District 24 and Southwest is right around the corner. The Inspector General was not able to identify any clear improvement to NAS operations overall. Instead, overall operations appeared to become less efficient, with average taxi time, departure delays, and arrival delays all increasing over this period. Airlines for America also conducted analysis showing increased block times. While FAA has deployed much of the infrastructure for NextGen, new capabilities that are expected to generate benefits are not widely used or have yet to be implemented. So I guess a question for Pamela Whitley, if you don't mind. The IG report shows that the FAA claims NextGen has generated $6 billion in total benefits from 2010 to 2018, split evenly between FAA, airlines, and the traveling public. These benefits represent a small percentage of FAA's overall $100 billion total benefits and are lower than the $9 billion that FAA has already invested in implementing NextGen. So how did they arrive at those projected benefits of $100 billion cumulatively?
Thank you for the question. Our benefits are derived based on the modeling work that we do for the capabilities that we're putting in place. And the formula includes several things that change over time. One would be the traffic forecast. We also have to make assumptions about equipage levels when we do the benefits estimates. The $7 billion to date basically is based on our measurement through the modeling of the capabilities that are in place. And we believe that those things will continue to accrue benefits. The additional things that we put in the system, along with increased equipage and greater usage, is what gets us to the $100 billion estimate.
Okay, thank you for that. Terry Bristol, the airline industry and the broader aviation community have invested in ADS-B out compliant transponders to comply with the 2020 mandate. However, additional significant benefits will accrue when air traffic control can identify and authorize ADS-B incapable aircraft to safely fly more efficiently. So would you mind please describing any challenges associated with deploying this technology more expeditiously, particularly at congested airports like DFW?
Okay, thank you, Congresswoman. So explain again. So are you asking about ADS-B out, or are you asking a different question?
Yes, ADS-B out.
Right. So the ADS-B out, we ingest that into our automation system. So pilots have to have their transponders on, but we can see those airplanes now that are equipped with ADS-B out, and we can see them flying in the system. And in some parts of the country, we can see them where in mountainous terrain, as an example, we previously couldn't see them. So it gives our controllers far better visibility and insight into who's operating.
So the question was, do you have any challenges though? Can you describe any of the challenges that you have had associated with the deployment?
No, you know what, when it came to ADS-B out, actually that program was completed a number of years ago. Any new program as it's being developed, you will encounter challenges, but we deployed the ground infrastructure years before the industry were required to equip by 2020. So, I think that it is a very good safety improvement for our controllers to be able to see that all of those aircraft that are operating within their airspace. So right now, Congresswoman, I would tell you that we don't have any major challenges with ADSB out.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. And Ms. Pinkerton, over the past few months, there's been a tremendous amount of discussion and disagreement on what spending should or should not be included in a transportation bill. So I would ask you, can you outline some of the infrastructure investments that Congress could make that would improve next-gen implementation and efficiency in American aviation generally?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to do that. And I'd like to kind of piggyback off of your last question to answer this question. Because as you know, there was a mandate for ADSB out. Carriers spent over $1 billion on that. And I agree with Terry. There is a safety benefit for controllers, which is important in being able to see more accurately where all aircraft are. But frankly, what we had wanted was some additional procedural benefits from that $1 billion investment. And those have really been slow to come. That's why in my opening statement, I mentioned putting oceanic surveillance as a priority on FAA's list for getting that done more quickly. Because frankly, I think therein lies one of the dilemmas. I mentioned this list that everyone, all of the labor, industry, passenger groups came up with. There are things on it like the air traffic controllers' desire to see newer, not having 40-year-old and 60-year-old facilities, which are certainly not good for the environment. But the issue that I mentioned was this kind of last mile of equipage for PBN and Datacom. And I know, some people would ask, well, why don't you all just equip with that? And I would say, other than the $40 billion that we lost last year and the $20 billion that we're going to use this year, the problem is really that we haven't seen enough of a benefits case from equipage. And that is why we are asking for that $1.5 billion to get us the last mile on next gen. Frankly, when you look at the surface bill, we understand we are a small part of that. I think, though, that as the committee moves forward on an infrastructure bill, of course, surface will be primary, but I think spending money on aviation can really get us a long way and can get a lot of bang for our buck in greening the air traffic control system. So that's one of our top priorities, in addition to what Paul mentioned on facilities. And there are several other things on our list, including that oceanic surveillance program, which I don't think is as much a matter of money, frankly, as it is just moving forward with the program in a more accelerated fashion.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate that. And now we'll go with Representative Kahele from Hawaii.
Aloha.
And then Greg Stanton will follow Kai. Kai, go ahead.
Aloha, Chair and Ranking Member Graves. Mahalo for having this roundtable. I wanted to echo Captain Fox, who talked about flying with the VOR navigation system. He might have forgot the NDB, or the non-directional beacon that we use to fly all over the country before things like GPS. But the previous member's question and dialogue lead perfectly into what I was going to talk about, which is that $1.5 billion request for ATC modernization equipage fund. I mean, I have some concerns with that, only because I'd like to know more about where that money would be spent. I mean, in the testimony, you talked about regional airlines as being some of the most challenged and mixed equipage in equipping those that regional fleet with the new technology. My understanding is the regional fleet is also an aging regional fleet, and that the regional fleet will be replaced in the next few years with more modern regional equipment. And so, is this something that Congress should look at appropriating over $1 billion in equipment that and into aircraft that potentially will be not be flying and will not be utilized in the near future. I mean, part of Next Gen is that the government and also aviation stakeholders would be investing in those technological upgrades to improve the national airspace system. So if you could expand more on that position, specifically the Modernization Equipage Fund, what major airlines have already made the modernization in their fleets, and what regional airlines have done or have not done so, and what is the age of those regional fleets, and is this a smart investment for the Congress to make?
So since Chip is really here representing the regional carriers, I'm happy, but I'd like to defer to him first, and then I'll chime in on the major carriers and their investments, if that's okay.
You bet.
Yeah, thanks, Carmen. That's a great question, because I think your assumption of what's happening in the regional model is pretty accurate. There are some big questions and complications relative to the regional fleets. There's no doubt that, like, I would say that we're the largest regional carrier in the world. Give us an example. We fly about 500 aircraft, and about 40% of the aircraft that we fly today, we've bought within the last 6 to 7 years, and they're ready to go with the minimum capabilities list. We have a smaller fleet that is aging, and that we do not have a great market strategy to replace that fleet as of this time. We would love to do a fleet replacement with new aircraft that come out with all the all the technology related to the MCL and everything that we're talking about. The problem is that we have some market forces relative to some of the manufacturers. I don't want to get too complicated into some of the commercial side of this, but to answer your question, it's very uncertain about how long we can actually, assume that we're going to replace this fleet. We don't have the right manufacturers in place to replace the fleet. So we're assuming that we're going to be flying this fleet for, a fairly long amount of time. And this is a fleet that would need a relatively expensive retrofit of some of the technologies in order to get to the minimum capabilities list, to make sure that we get, to that big, wide-ranging amount of the fleet throughout the United States that's flown that way. So from our perspective, I think that it's a very good source of funds. We're the biggest regional carrier. Most regional carriers are a lot smaller than we are. They've suffered a lot through the pandemic, trying to come out and get back on their feet, and an infrastructure, investment into a fleet that has some uncertainty about the longevity of how it's going to fly, and if it's going to have a replacement is in my view, a very key reason why I'm the chairman of the NAC, and something that we work on every single day.
Thank you. I had one more question. I don't know if Sharon, you wanted to add in the majors?
Yeah, very quickly, you asked kind of what is the ratio. So in the estimate that we developed for equipage, the regional aircraft, there are 1,146 of those aircraft, and the mainline aircraft, there are 496. And I like Chip, agree, this is a good question, and certainly Chairman DeFazio's bill has a cash for clunkers provision in it. I would note that during from 2017 to 2020, carriers took delivery of 1,000 new aircraft, which are fully equipped and much quieter. And they also in 2020 announced immediate retirement of about 300 planes, and then announced another 300 that would be retired over the next 3 years. So I do think that process is ongoing, but I still think there's this last mile of equipage that the IG has identified, where we firmly believe, it's kind of a chicken and an egg, which comes first, the equipage or the benefits. And quite frankly, we need a chicken because we just haven't seen the benefits.
Okay, thank you. And one more question I have. Thank you, Chair. And it's not specific to Next Gen, but it has to do with the efficiency of flying our U.S. Routes over the country. And I'm wondering if the FAA or the Department of Transportation can answer this. In addition to NextGen, which is really relying on space-based technology and more enhanced precision approaches and parallel runway operations, safer conditions for ATC to operate into highly congested airports. Are we also coordinating, or is there any conversations happening with the Department of Defense in terms of the nation's airspace and military use airspace? And as you all know, the military airspace covers a lot of the country. Oftentimes, it's not being utilized, or it's not hot versus cold. The military likes to make airspace hot all the time, but it causes aircraft routes to be diverted and not the most efficient flight paths over the country. Is there coordination with the Department of Defense in terms of reevaluating the nation's airspace and our military operating areas that we have over the country?
Ms. Bristol, if you could answer that quickly. Thank you.
I can do that, Chair. Yes, Congressman. Actually, we're working very closely, my office, with Wayne Schatz, who is in charge of the PBFA, Policy Board for the FAA from DOD. We are talking about many of those things, but we're working very closely on military operating areas and working to identify how much airspace is really needed. What are our procedures for approving yearly exercises? How much airspace do they need? And can we more actively reallocate that? So I would say yes, yes, and yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
You're
Chair.
welcome.
Thank you. I'll turn to Representative Stanton from Arizona. Greg, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much, Chairman Larson. This really has been an outstanding roundtable. I have learned a ton about the updates to NextGen. Was mentioned by many members earlier about issues as it relates to air noise over communities. It was mentioned earlier that Phoenix was the first city in which NextGen was attempted to be implemented. I happened to be mayor of Phoenix during that time that NextGen was attempted to be implemented over Phoenix. And if you were involved in the issue, you know it didn't go very well. Phoenix had engaged in smart land use planning for decades around Sky Harbor Airport. And the feeling by myself and the community was that NextGen had kind of upended decades of smart land use planning to obtain the ends of NextGen: efficiency and sustainability, less usage of fuel, et cetera. But to obtain those ends, it upended decades of smart land use planning by the city of Phoenix in terms of efficient land use around Sky Harbor Airport. Unfortunately, it ended up in litigation, and it ended up being, at least from Phoenix's perspective, successful litigation to undo the takeoff and landing routes to go back to the old ones while we study how NextGen will impact historic neighborhoods near Sky Harbor. And I wanted to see, since the Phoenix litigation, how's it going relative to NextGen taking into account land use planning by the various communities near airports around the country? How has NextGen and the planning for NextGen changed as a result of what happened in Phoenix? And that's really for anyone.
I can take that. Thank you, Congressman. What I would tell you is that we've heard from communities, we've heard from Congress, and we've fundamentally changed the way we engage with communities. Aircraft noise, it's a shared responsibility, and it's critical that the airlines, the airports, and the local governments are part of that conversation. I will tell you that over the years of Metroplex, we have continued to learn a lot as well. And within the agency, we absolutely prioritize community engagement to address aircraft noise. We have any number of airport roundtables that are taking place around the country. We work with our regional administrators very closely in different parts of the country to engage at that local level. We've stood up a new airport noise forum, and we've established new processes to increase communication between the FAA, airports, as well as airlines. So we really have over the years modified our processes, and I think that the agency is doing a much better job.
I just want to second that, Terry. Since 2016, the new community outreach and best practices that were created by the FAA in coordination with industry, I think it's made a huge difference with community outreach and our success there. So thank you to FAA.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was my single question. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the good answer.
You're welcome.
Thanks. I don't see any members left, so I'm going to have some questions to wrap. First is for Mr. Rinaldi, and this harkens back to a question that was asked earlier about PBN use at certain airports at certain times. How do your members make the choices about how to use the PBNs for managing air traffic?
Thank you, sir. It's set up to use those approaches unless winds don't alignment do not dictate, or certainly traffic flow or volume of traffic won't dictate to use it. And at times, it's more efficient not to use it. And as far as PBN, as we talk about noise, it's more precise. Representative Lynch is absolutely correct. We hit the same, position at the same altitude every time. And the winners and losers, there's a lot of winners in the noise game, but they don't say anything because they don't hear any airplane noise, but the losers hear a lot of airplane noise. So the FAA, they field a lot of complaints and across the country at all these metroplexes when we use these approaches because of noise. So there are times when we try not to use them. There are benefits to using them, and there's certainly benefits at times not to use them.
Is follow-up, is the default position to use them, to use the newer ones?
Yeah, I on arrivals, absolutely. Departures, depending on what the departure push looks like, where the departure fixes are going to go after the runway. Certainly, depending on winds, the surface, they want to be, they want to depart into the wind. All of these things take into place of what's the most advantageous departure route to use.
Okay, thanks. Chip, a question for you on the minimum capabilities list. This goes, remember back 2 hours ago when you gave your statement? The minimum capabilities list on avionics. Can you talk through a little bit how the NAC makes those choices on priorities, specifically on the capabilities list, since that's really a kind of the equipage issue?
I'd love to. Thank you, Chairman. I think, the process that we have at the NAC is one that is extraordinarily collaborative with the FAA and all the stakeholders within the NAC. And I think that our challenge is you have a lot of operators, a lot of interested parties on the NAC with a lot of different technologies. And sometimes we've been trying to keep up with the technology train in the past, because just as you get ready to execute something, there's something new that comes out that's better and safer and all these things. And so that's a very, very big challenge with the number of constituents that we have within the committee. But the process starts at a subcommittee level, and we take a look at what the ROI, I'm as chairman, and I probably use that acronym, I probably owe another quarter, but I use that acronym as chairman more than any other acronym, because I'm not a pilot. I sometimes have to go back and do my research at every meeting. But ROI is still, I think, the most important conversation about what we're doing at the NAC. And that has to pay benefits to everybody, primarily with safety. It's hard to identify the yield of safety and the investments that the FAA has made, but the process is extremely collaborative. And as we went through the process over the last couple of years, right before the pandemic, we all came together with the FAA and all those operators, and we said, to get the best baseline ROI out of the system immediately, this is the list of things that we have to focus on and get started, and require manufacturers to build airplanes that has this type of technology going forward. It's called a minimum list for a reason. Like, this is the baseline of what we need to get to. We have a lot of other technologies that we need to add to that list. And as we start to get through, again, this equipage piece, I mean, the number one challenge to the MCL list and getting all of the macro yield out of the system is making sure we have all of our aircraft equipped so that we can get to a macro analysis like the Inspector General has to see where those yields are. We know at a micro level, all of these technologies are incredibly powerful. But at a macro level, we got to get to the equipage. We've got good consensus at the NAC. We just decided on it 18 months ago. We had the pandemic hit, and I can assure you the NAC is ready to go get along with the FAA and execute the requirements of the MCO.
Okay. I've got a question for Mr. Soska, and then I'll turn to Congressman Holmes Norton. And thanks for coming back, Eleanor. I appreciate that. So for Mr. Soskin, Representative Brownlee's question earlier was about kind of, is there an end date? And I think it's kind of hard to say there's an end date to next gen because technologies keep changing, and presumably you could just keep folding in, building on, replacing with the latest gizmo. But you know, we have to kind of have a timeline. How are you choosing 2025 versus 2030 versus 2035? And is there a way to get a more accurate count of the cost and the benefits so that we can have a measurement more often and a more accurate measurement more often of the benefits of these technologies being folded in for use?
Chairman Larson, in our report this past year, we looked at 2025 to provide a consistent benchmark to look at how the forecasts of next-gen benefits have changed over time. And as we noted in our report, FAA's most recent projection of benefits in 2017 looked to 2030 as a date through which to measure benefits. The JPDO back in 2007 looked at a number of dates through which to project benefits. Also 2025, I think, was one of those dates. One of the forecasts.
The Joint Planning Development Office?
The Joint Planning Development Office. Yes, okay, it was one of the collaborative efforts at the back towards the beginning of Next Gen to plan the original portfolio of programs out. Right. And they even had a projection that went, I think, years beyond that to 2050. From the perspective of the Office of Inspector General, there is not a particular end date that one should choose to measure benefits, but to understand the evolution of those benefits over time, it makes sense to compare apples to apples. With most infrastructure programs, it will take time to realize the benefits after the infrastructure is adopted and is created. And as our report recognizes, now as we operationalize and implement the procedures on top of the benefits, the controller tools, the procedures on top of the infrastructure, the controller tools on top of the infrastructure, and as all the air traffic control stakeholders make decisions about how to take advantage of that technology, we will see benefits come into force. It's really heartening to see here today all of the discussion and all of the demonstration of the collaboration among airspace stakeholders, because as you know, in our report, we highlighted that need for collaboration as one of the key elements to realizing benefits.
So the apples to apples metaphor is just music to my ears being from Washington State. Are we at a point where we're no longer comparing, say, a 2007 estimate, which would be totally out of whack, and we have so much experience beyond that we are actually at let's just pick the cosmic crisp apple comparison to another cosmic crisp apple, or are we comparing different apples? How close are we to having an actual baseline that is firm from which to compare, or are we close enough that we can make those comparisons?
So Chairman Larson, if we want to compare costs and benefits, we can of course take the costs to date I think 11 billion rather is what FAA had forecast to spend through
11
the end
million,
of
that's
FY.
great.
Through the end of FY21, 9 billion, I think they had quantified in spending through the end of FY19. And we can compare the benefits to date with that. But if we see that the benefits to date fall short of that spending, and of course, it's not just the spending by FAA that's relevant here, it's the spending on equipage. We do need to recognize that, as with any infrastructure program, we need to look ahead and project a period of benefits into the future.
Before I go to Eleanor, but I do want to ask you that. In looking forward, do we have a consistent way to do that? Have we learned enough over the last, I think Pete and I have maybe served, and Eleanor have served longest on this committee. Have we learned enough over the last, whatever it is, 16 years to say, moving forward, we know in calculating those benefits that we will be looking at A, B, C, D, and E, or are we still adding F, G, H, and I that we didn't add before to the benefits list? I mean, do we have a consistent way to measure it moving forward on the benefit side?
Some of our recommendations that we have made, and one of the principal ones in our 2021 report, look to the importance of having FAA publish metrics and make those transparent and allow those to be used for benefits. And I think in working together with airspace stakeholders in figuring out, what the most important benefits are, and having a process and a plan for measuring those each year, that will really help with all of the challenges of implementing the further steps on next gen. And I do want to say that where you opened, I think is a good way of looking at things. That the process of technological modernization is one that is going to be ongoing, and some of these capabilities that we're talking about today, like cloud computing, were not really in the picture when next gen was embarked on 18 or more years ago.
All right, next. Thank you. Congresswoman Holmes Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you're right about how long I've been on this committee, and aviation is particularly important to me. And I feel like, having been on the commission that I had on the committee and subcommittee, that aviation noise has been on my agenda too for a long time. So these questions are for Ms. Whitley at the Federal Aviation Administration. Ms. Whitley, I'm co-chair of the Quiet Skies Caucus. So that tells you how important aviation noise has been, that there's a whole caucus. And it is bipartisan on noise. So I was pleased with the FAA's recent response to our letter of concern about the neighborhood environmental survey. But I'm pleased to have you before us because I remain concerned specifically with the FAA's Next Gen project that has concentrated flight paths without consideration to the people below those flight paths. As a result of Next Gen and FAA's response to mitigating aviation noise, millions of Americans still suffer from sleep disruption, exacerbation is reported of blood pressure, and other chronic diseases. Learning loss in schools has been reported, and economic losses to businesses, which is of course of special concern. Could I ask you, Ms. Whitley, what timeline can you provide for when our constituents will experience relief from the relentless drone of aviation noise?
Well, Congresswoman, I can actually take that question. What I would share with you is that, and I had shared a bit before, is that aircraft noise is a shared responsibility, and it is absolutely critical that the airlines, the airports, local governments were all part of that conversation. I hope you can see that the FAA has really worked hard on evolving our engagement practices with communities. We have engaged in countless airport roundtables across the country, ad hoc committees, task forces, technical working groups. Our regional administrators play a critical role in those community engagements as well. We stood up a new airport noise forum, and that is providing real benefit for the cooperation between the FAA and the airports and airlines to identify common issues and challenges that we all need to work on together. Our noise ombudsmen are very actively engaged regionally in various airport. When we start to if we understand that there are noise concerns at particular airports or from community citizens, they get involved immediately. And then we're actively evaluating and moving forward on a number of consensus recommendations from roundtables across the country. A few examples of those are Boston, DCA, BWI, and Portland, Maine, just to name a few. So I hear you, I understand, and it's something we'll just need to continue to work together on, but you've got our commitment.
I thank you. Your mention of the airport noise forum, I just wanted to know if there is any arena to bring these agencies and parties together to work on airport noise.
Well, I think that ongoing, the continued roundtables that we have through our regional administrators, ensuring that we get all voices at the table.
Do you get all of them at the table for that roundtable?
You know what? We're trying to get more and more. During COVID, we actually conducted roundtables virtually. And actually, it was, we were very pleased because we got more citizens dialing in virtually than we ever would have got if the meeting had been held in person. Because neighborhoods are next to each other around airports, and it's really important that all voices are heard and everybody is understanding the same information at the same time. So also we've got our NAC, our Next Gen Advisory Committee, and we are actively pulling in our environmental and noise folks from the FAA and working with the NAC community on additional recommendations for improving processes and procedures around the country due to noise. So it is not going away. This is something we will absolutely continue to work on.
I really appreciate the greater effort to bring together the multiple parties, because that may be part of the problem of getting a conclusion. Now, this is a question either for you, Ms. Britley, or Ms. Whitley. I understand that performance-based navigation, we call it PBN, creates efficient GPS-based flight paths that save time, that cut noise, that reduce emissions and fuel consumption, and improve airport capacity. Can you tell me more about how performance-based navigation achieves these benefits and how specifically that technology can reduce the impact of aviation noise in particular?
Congresswoman Holmes Norton, I'll start. PBN is actually a way of designing precise paths for the aircraft to travel. And it allows the aircraft to basically reach a point in space at a higher altitude that does not require the aircraft to do the step down. We've all been on the airplane and felt the aircraft accelerating and deaccelerating and actually kind of almost looking like stair steps coming down. But those procedures require the equipment that we talked about. So we're in the process of putting those procedures in the system, and we have about 9,600 of those procedures already established. The airlines, the carriers are very well equipped to fly those procedures. We find that there's a gap in the regionals, so we really would like to use those procedures more and more. And when the aircraft is able to fly those procedures, because they're not using the engines, then you don't hear as much noise and they're much more fuel efficient. So it's definitely the way to go. We've been working towards that. It's very site specific in terms of doing the design work, but it's a kind of perfect marriage between designing the procedures, identifying the right place for us to put those procedures, which we work with the stakeholders now to do that, getting the equipage levels up, and we think that ultimately gives us much more value in the system, better benefits, and a return on the investment.
And Congresswoman, the other thing that I would add is that our community engagement officers and noise ombudsmen are, as we consider new procedural designs for PBN procedures, they're getting involved upfront. So if we are aware that there are particular concerns from communities and citizens, we're taking that in before we ever start designing those procedures, so that we've got more voices involved and we just have better awareness going into that procedural design.
Oh, thank you. Ms. Whitley, you said 9,600 procedures established out of how many?
I'll have to refer to Terry. What we've been doing is kind of looking at the old procedures that require the old technology and the old way, and going in, working with the industry to identify their priorities and redoing those procedures. But the actual total number of procedures, I'd refer to my colleague in air traffic to answer that.
Yeah, currently, Congresswoman, we have 21,000 procedures in our inventory. 9,600 of them are PBN procedures.
So it looks like we have quite a long way to go.
Well, I think it depends how you look at it. We have a lot of procedures in our inventory. We do track utilization, and we've continued to increase the number of procedures year over year that we are developing. So 9,600 are current PBN procedures.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for keeping this open long enough for me to get back from my last hearing.
No problem at all, Ellen. It's my pleasure. That wraps it up for questions from members, and I want to thank the panel for coming together to help us get level set on next gen, what it means, what it can mean, what it will mean in the future. We did the roundtable format so that we could have a little bit looser Q&A, explore issues a little bit better than we sometimes are able to do in a hearing. But I appreciate everyone's involvement and willingness to hang with us for the last 2 hours. And we'll have staff follow up with any questions that we may have following this. So I want to thank you all very much for your time today. And with that, I'll close up the roundtable. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.